Well, everybody, I hate to say it, but I'm gonna have to subject you to possibly one of the most annoying, overplayed British accents on the entire internet. I don't even have to say who it is, and you already know who it is we're covering, just by me saying that alone. Paul Joseph Watson. Now, PJW is a weird figure as far as right-wing pundits go, right? Because here's the thing. On one hand, he is literally the most prude, boomer-minded, hyper-conservative, take society back to like the 1950s or 1940s kind of guy that you can really find in conservative media punditry. He's one of the most like hardline boomer types, right? But at the same time, all of his like content on YouTube is heavily targeting Zoomers, and it comes off as like the most hello fellow kid shit ever. So on one hand, he is the like one of the highest up at what's it called? Breitbart? He writes for Breitbart, right? Is it Breitbart or is it Alex Jones's show? I forget. InfoWars. Thank you. It's InfoWars, right? Yeah. So he does he writes for InfoWars, and he basically like does really boomer, like conspiracy boomer articles on InfoWars. But then what he does is he does these like Zoomer fuel, highly edited hello fellow kids videos that are meant to appeal to kids. But whenever he says something that needs to be cited, 95% of the time, the citation is an article that he wrote on InfoWars. Like the meme of like, who's your source? Me? Like I made it up, literally comes from Paul Joseph Watson citing his own articles in all, like as basically all of his sources in all of his videos. So it's pretty good meme. Anyway, I'm very sorry you're gonna have to listen to this guy talk because it really does hurt. Oh my god!
People used to do jokey puns about the term transgender by referencing the classic kids franchise Transformers.
Transformers! Robots in disguise.
Well, now the Transformers are transgender.
My pronouns are they, them.
No one asked.
But, okay, so, alright, one thing you're gonna have to remember about Paul Joseph Watson videos is they don't make arguments. They don't make arguments at all. What they do is basically just talk about things that are remotely progressive and speak of it in a very vitriolic way, in a way that is very judgmental of the viewer if they disagree with the points that he agrees with, basically implying if you don't agree with the sentiment of the video, then you are lesser, without actually making an argument that is meant to convince, or at least seems like it's meant to convince, I should say. So yeah, it's mostly just going to be like memes and like dunking on wokeness with very shoddily put together dunks.
She, they, but you already know that.
Imagine tiny children watching this trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
Sometimes
Should kids not know what pronouns are? Should they not learn grammatically correct English because they're little kids? Like, surely if they're little kids confused by the concept of pronouns, then they need to learn about them, right? I know that, like, the right has turned pronouns into, like, this meme, and you can ask your average conservative, would you date a girl with pronouns? And they'd say no, because they literally think dating a girl with pronouns means dating a trans woman, because that's how, like, melded together in the average transphobe's mind this shit is. They don't have, like, a coherent understanding of this stuff. It's just sort of like a ball of propaganda that forms like a sentiment of dislike for all that is woke that these people believe. So with that said, like, wouldn't kids who are confused about pronouns, which I know, they sound scary, but they're just grammatically correct English, wouldn't they need to learn about that stuff? That's what that's for, like they learn about it in the kids show, maybe? I don't know.
the world can be a scary place. It's hard to know who's dangerous or not. I know I'm safe when I'm with my friends or other non-binary people.
Yes, they may have just endured a horrific civil war between the Autobots and the Decepticons, but misgendering is still a big problem.
My pronoun
So, is it not a little weird that these conservative pundits make a career off of, like, shitting on children's shows? And it's not even, like, all ages children's shows that have appeal with adults, too, that might, like, do critical analysis of it. But it's like, no, grown-ass men paid by billionaires making millions to shit on literal baby shows because they're supposedly woke. Like, this is where conservative propaganda has fallen.
Pronouns are they, them. Non-binary.
People who aren't female or male.
Expect this video to mostly just be a lot of just the words non-binary or pronouns being said, or like male and female being said, and like you're supposed to cringe because they're saying woke words.
What a wonderful word for a wonderful experience.
The depression and suicide rates kind of suggest otherwise. Even
Oh, hey, PJW, you actually made an argument here. Okay, we can acknowledge this argument. Well, we can talk about the fact that the overwhelming... Well, actually, you know what? We got the meme, don't we? I gotta make sure the audio doesn't play or I'll get copyright memed, but, we got the meme. For sources on what I'm about to say, refer to the video that I'm about to play on screen. And imagine that some very, like, poppy music is playing while it's going, because canonically that's what's supposed to be happening. Anyway, yes, trans people, non-binary people, and just generally all people within, like, gender non-conforming spectrum do have significantly higher rates of depression and suicidal ideation than cis people. Do you know what all of the overwhelming scientific consensus has shown, though? That not only affirming trans people's identities is what they claim to be, if you're a family member or a friend, but also providing roadblockless, gender-affirming medical care is what has been found to be the best and only solution to that high rate of suicide and depression. Paul Joseph Watson, of course, doesn't care about this in the sense that he doesn't care about trans people being suicidal or depressed. He just cares about it being a stat that he can weaponize to say, oh, well, if trans people want to be trans, then surely they wouldn't be suicidal, right? Surely there couldn't be other factors that contribute to this, right? Anyway, to back that up, here's a bunch of studies flashing on the screen that back up this consensus. You can pause it bit by bit if you want.
The answer to my name is not just a symbol or a target sign. A spell that attracts all who spit facts online all the time. The answer to my name is not just a symbol or a target sign. A voice that compels all to rebel from our unshackled minds. It's you and me, your mom, it's me. I'll take another hit from my name. You'll see now. Watch me not now.
It's a very good video. It's a very good video. Link the video? Okay. As long as you follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, okay? This is a link to my Twitter post, alright? So make sure you follow me on Twitter and like and retweet that post after I send that to you, okay? But yeah, it's a very good meme. It's a very good meme, and I like using it in response to conservatives pretending like they have any grounds to stand on in regards to reality when it comes to their transphobia, because they very much do not.
suicide rates kind of suggest otherwise. Even Optimus Prime slipped into some casual transphobia.
Of course. Morgan, can you switch,
Before being quickly corrected.
Nightshade's pronouns are they, them.
He or she just doesn't fit who I am.
my apologies.
Damn right, bigot. They
So, the right has spent a lot of time and money creating a fantasy where, like, if you misgender a trans person or use the wrong pronouns or whatever, you will literally be arrested, sent to prison, and then, like, shot in a firing line in a public execution in the street over, like, as like, LGBT pride flags surround you. Like, they've genuinely spent a lot of time, money, and effort building that fantasy up in the minds of a lot of, like, very scared straight people. But in reality, as it turns out, when you misgender a trans person in real life, the vast majority of the time, and by that I mean basically every time, the way it's going to go is you'll be politely corrected, and then assuming you're a decent person, you'll correct yourself, and it's all good. Like, that's all that happened there. and not Matt Walsh. Sorry, all these people kind of blend together. They're all just husks. They're all husks. They're not actual people. Like Paul Joseph Watson isn't actually going to make a sound argument here. It's just the idea that like, oh, well, you are a bigot if you misgender people. Isn't that right? The lefties say that. That's what the lefties say. It's what the woke people say. You're a bigot because you misgendered someone. Optimus Prime would get called a bigot. Aren't they crazy that they would do this, you know? They're not actually, but they would do it. That's really in line with the woke people, you know? And meanwhile, they're literally complaining about agender robots. You remember, like, the quartering controversy from back in the day, right? Like, back before the quartering was, like, full-on a conservative grifter, like, openly, and his entire audience was just right-wing people. He used to claim he was more centrist and he didn't care about politics or anything like that, and he was just talking about what he was passionate about. That veneer has fallen quite a bit since back then, but he debated Destiny on this topic because he made a video about Apex Legends, and he was upset about the game having an agender robot. He said the game devs were woke because the game had an agender robot in it. And like the robot isn't even said in lore to be agender. It's just the quartering started saying over and over again that the robot is agender. So it doesn't count as a man or as a straight white man because the quartering was upset that there weren't enough straight white men in the game. Like, we're literally going back to that era of conservative content. I told you guys, I saw it coming, the next age of, like, right-wing cultural dominance, and I'm telling you, I can see it coming the next, like, fall of right-wing cultural dominance. Like, I can see this shit starting to fall apart.
You really have to take everything that was good and wholesome about your childhood and defile it, don't they? We really went from Transformers the movie where Megatron...
There's something really disturbing about how, like, every Paul Joseph Watson video seems to, like, zoom in slightly closer to his face, and he talks with his eyes, like, dead in the camera, and he's constantly, like, tilting his head as he speaks, like this, staring dead in the camera, tilting his head as he speaks. It's very disturbing.
Murdered Ironhide by shooting him in the face with his arm cannon to Transformers with pronouns. Do we have another Bud Light style boycott in the works? Well, the Transformers franchise is owned by Hasbro, which isn't exactly overperforming financially at the moment.
Go
so they'd
woke,
likely
go
be
broke.
vulnerable to such a backlash. But Paul, these are just some relative...
I am very happy to know these people are going to get destroyed in the next election. I say these people as, like, the Republicans, but Paul Joseph Watson's British. He's yet another one of these foreign grifters that come from another country to talk about American politics because it's the most, like, volatile and easy to monetize from the right-wing perspective. Like, do you ever think about why British, Canadian, etc., like, political activists on the right are always talking about American politics exclusively? The reason for that is because American politics is so volatile and so divided that you can make so much more money off of pushing right-wing propaganda here in America and to Americans than you can to, say, British people or French people or Canadians, right? So you see a lot of Canadian far-right figures that are just exclusively doing American political right-wing advocacy.
Relatively obscure television cartoons? Why are you getting mad over that? Ew, right-wing snowflake. Bigots are raging at Transformers cartoon with a non-binary alien robot. It's just about increasing representation. Really? So
Well, yes, it is about increasing representation because, like, scientifically speaking, being exposed to a broad, like, diversity of identities in media that you consume has an analogous effect to having friends of those groups. It's not exactly the same and it's not ideal, but unironically consuming content that has, like, people of certain races, certain sexualities and whatnot, playing prominent characters that are presented positively has, like, very similar effects on the human psychology to having friends of that group. It destigmatizes and normalizes and kind of takes away a lot of the mystique and perhaps even fear or xenophobia that could come from, you know, like, not really knowing a group of people.
10 years ago in the UK, according to NHS referrals, the number of children who said they were suffering from gender dysphoria
Oh, we're getting the the social contagion argument. Reminder, guys, there's absolutely no scientific evidence whatsoever that being trans is a social contagion. In fact, we have evidence to the contrary. One of my favorite examples to draw when it comes to why the right is full of shit in regards to the idea that acceptance of LGBT people is leading to there being like a grooming social contagion is bullshit. Look at this chart for the history of left-handedness in America. As you can see during this downward trend, left-handedness was heavily punished for students in schools. You would particularly have your wrist slapped, or your left wrist slapped by the teacher if you wrote with your left hand and have to write with your right hand. Around the 1930s, or sorry, the 1910s, I apologize. God, my nose is so itchy today. Around the 1910s, as you can see, they stopped punishing kids for being left-handed. And as you can see, the rate of kids who are left-handed went up very quickly over a very short period of time until it leveled out. Because as it turns out, there's a pretty fundamental, baseline level amount of left-handed people in society. And chances are that is also true of trans and gay people, because we've seen the same trend with gay people, and we're going to see the same trend with trans people too. When a group of people that have always existed are allowed to exist more and more each day, and as things are getting worse in some areas, they are getting better in others, you're going to see a rise in younger people opening up at a younger age about being part of that identity.
Dysphoria stood at just 250. A decade later, and that number stands at 5,000. Is that
Wow.
near 2,000% increase in children reporting gender dysphoria over just the last 10 years? The natural response to LGBT Zoomers feeling more represented in television cartoons?
Non-binary.
Or is the 2,000%
Is he going to say TikTok? Is he going to say TikTok? I bet he's going to say TikTok.
increase actually a product of a sustained social engineering project, relentlessly promoted by cultural institutions, ceaselessly amplified by celebrities and transnational corporations, institutionalized, recognized, and given
Okay, he's JQing right now. For those that don't know, Paul Joseph Watson is a neo-Nazi, and he has been for a while. He JQs in a lot of his videos, so he's doing the Jewish question right now. He's talking about the Jews.
credence by the law and the state in every single Western country in the world, as the flag of this supposedly marginalized movement literally flies over major government buildings, or because some alien robot
You know what flag also flies over major government buildings in America? What other flag is known for flying over quite a few government buildings in America? It almost feels as though Paul Joseph Watson's fine with this one, and he is. I'm pretty sure Paul Joseph Watson, and I know Alex Jones has, defend the flying of Confederate flags at Capitol buildings in southern states. Why is it all of a sudden a problem for pro-trans flags to be flown at Capitol buildings? Is it because they believe that it is good to be pro-slavery, but bad to be pro-trans? Because that's what I think it is.
in a TV cartoon said they them were non-binary.
My pronouns are they, them.
Gee, I wonder. Don't go away, because there's much more to come. Cold turkey may be great on sandwiches, but there's a better way to break your bad habits. And I'm not
All right. An 8-minute video, an 8-minute and 7-second video, the absolute bare minimum you have to reach in video length to get mid-roll ads. And somehow he fit a sponsorship into the video that takes up roughly this much of the video. Scum. I need you guys to understand how much money these people are rolling in. It's absurd amounts of money. If any lefty figure other than Hassan had access to a fraction of the amount of money these people do, it would be a game changer.
off your order today. Now back to the video. Over 20% of Gen Z now identifies as LGBT. That figure has jumped by 5% in just the last 3 years alone, and it hasn't spiked like anything near that amongst older generations. A new poll in
Keep seething. Oh, and guess what? Guess what? In the American elections, I meant to bring this up earlier. In American elections, the transphobia is just not winning. Americans just do not single issue vote on the trans thing. That, like, the far right, like, trans panic shit is not really resonating with Americans as much. Being super anti-trans is like it's effective insofar as getting people's blood pressure to spike on TV and on social media, but it doesn't really have staying power with the polls. The vast majority of Americans just don't care enough or are pro-trans. The Republicans put an absurd amount of money into campaign ads to push, like, the trans groomer narrative in the midterms, and it did not pay out well. They seem to be on track to repeat the same behavior in 2024, and I'm excited for the trend to continue in 2024.
In the UK finds that a majority, 54% of teenagers aged 16 to 18, know someone at school who wants to change their gender. A figure.
Yeah, and guess what? These kids are going to be growing up and voting. They're hitting voting age. A good portion of them are going to hit voting age by 2024, and a whole lot of them are going to hit voting age by 2028. It's gonna be pretty wild when 2028 comes around and all these gay Zoomers are voting. Oh boy, the Republicans are fucking scared.
That would have been in the single digits 10 years ago. Is that down to enhanced representation or enhanced indoctrination? Given that the transgender lobby have tried and succeeded in many cases in blocking teachers and schools from sharing sex education material of this nature with parents before their kids are exposed to it. Gee, I wonder why large...
So, I should also mention, by the way, that it's no longer a thing of the past of conservatives trying to ban the teaching of evolution in schools in the red states. Republicans just passed a law in, I think it was Ohio, but I may be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. That basically allows a teacher or allows parents to file for the termination of any teacher that teaches something in the classroom that they disagree with being taught to their kid. They can, like, file a motion to have the teacher's job terminated, just straight up. And it is very, very clear based on who passed the law and what they said when passing it, that the particular targets of this law are any teaching to do with, like, slavery being bad and, like, having happened and being a thing the South was in favor of, anything to do with, like, being pro-LGBT, and, of course, evolution. They're going to try to get teachers in trouble in these red states for teaching evolution. At the end of the day, the core of their ideology is to give parents the power to blacklist the truth from being taught to their kids if they want their kids to be indoctrinated into conservatism.
Numbers of teenagers are being taught in school that women can have penises that men can get.
Remember, guys, these people back in 2016 were the ones screaming and whining about how the left needs to live in an echo chamber and can't be exposed to any alternative ideas. And here they are arguing that it should literally be illegal for their kids to be exposed to any alternative ideas than what they agree with.
Pregnant and that sex is assigned at birth. Oh, and BDSM too. Lovely stuff. Is that merely an organic development encouraged by...
I'm sorry, but teaching teenagers in high school about sex in sex ed classes needs to be done well. And if teenagers are going to do BDSM, and trust me, some of them are doing BDSM, then they need to know how to do it safely, okay? It's important, all right? Because BDSM can be done dangerously. Quite easily it can be done dangerously. And teaching how to do it safely is kind of necessary. Because they're going to do it, and I'd rather there be less hurt or dead kids than, like, play into some puritanical idea of, like, oh, no, high school kids can't learn about sex. It'll corrupt their pure innocence.
Wider representation in society? Or is it because transgender activist groups are influencing the content of sex education lessons? Gee, I wonder. So now it's not just obscure television cartoons. This stuff...
You mean science? You mean, like, scientific institutions that just inconveniently for you disagree with everything you believe on trans people? They're literally teaching the science, and you disagree with the science, so you're just mad.
is deeply embedded within our school curriculums, and not just at the national level. This is an international project. The Telegraph reports on how the World Health Organization is encouraging
The Telegraph, okay.
schools and education.
He shamelessly cites, like, the most far-right publications as well. He is, like, openly a fascist and like, very, very far-right. He doesn't pretend to be, like, a centrist or a liberal or whatever. He's very much openly a fascist.
Educational institutions across the West to tell toddlers and infants to explore gender identities and engage in sexualized behavior from the ages of 0 to 4. Holy shit. The guidance
That means, like, playing with toys that aren't specifically marketed for the gender you were assigned at birth. Like, is it really bad if a little boy experiments with wearing dresses or playing with girls' toys if they want to? Like, that's literally all they said.
says that sexuality education starts from birth and is described as a framework for policymakers, educational and health authorities, and specialists. The WHO guidance also says that children aged 4 and under should be taught about enjoyment and pleasure when touching one's own body, early childhood masturbation. And they tie that in with infants having the right to ask questions about sexuality and the right to explore gender identity.
God forbid we allow children the opportunity to ask medical professionals questions about their body. Oh my God. Oh, we can't allow these children to have their questions answered about their own, like, physical biology. Like, it'll corrupt their innocence.
Oh, don't use the word groomer, though. The document states from birth,
Oh my God, literally. They literally call it grooming to teach kids sex education. Remember, guys, the next step is calling for the execution of teachers.
Babies learn the value and pleasure of bodily contact, warmth, and intimacy. They're literally trying to sexualize a newborn baby's natural bonding.
Okay. Paul Joseph Watson, I know you're a conservative, and we know what that means. But discussing sex education is not inherently sexualized. There is a very big difference between a scientific, factual discussion around sexual health and a sexualized discussion. If you go to the doctor, for example, Paul Joseph Watson, because you've got dick rot, and you go to the doctor, Paul Joseph Watson goes to his doctor, and he goes up to his doctor, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Paul Joseph Watson, and I have dick rot." And he's talking to the doctor about his dick rot, and you've got, PJWs there talking about his dick rot with the doctor. Just because he's talking about his dick rot, which is a rot of Paul Joseph Watson's dick, doesn't necessarily mean it is a sexualized conversation. It is a factual, scientific, medical discussion about health having to do with a sexual organ. So when the right says sexualized children in this context, what they actually mean is teach about biology and like this basic shit that is just scientific health education, but call it something that makes people scared and angry.
Experience with its own mother. The sick freaks. The woke Welsh government incorporated some of this guidance as part of its mandatory sex education syllabus. Yeah, this goes far deeper down the rabbit hole than just
My favorite part of this is that the right has to find a way to spin the narrative that they are winners, and that if you believe what they believe, you're a winner, while at the same time pushing the idea that unanimously all the scientific organizations in the world are... It's so bizarre, the level of like back and forth there is. It's all contradictory, everything they believe. On one hand, they think there is a massive... They act like there is a massive pile of scientific research that backs up what they believe about trans people, but at the same time, every scientific institution, every scientific study about this topic is corrupted by the Jews or by the trans lobby, as he calls them. And at the same time, you're like a winner if you believe in conservatism. Like, winners believe in the right, winners support Donald Trump, winners are conservative, yada, yada, yada. But then on the other hand, all of the governments and all of the institutions and all of the powerful people supposedly are all woke and implementing woke policies, so the right's actually losing and they're the underdog. All of these things are contradictory. to each other. But it all makes it sound like you want to be conservative. Even though none of these things can be true at once, all of them make stupid people think conservatism sounds correct and cool.
TV cartoons, doesn't it?
Non-binary?
WHO spokesman told The Telegraph the organisation stands by its guidance and it remains accessible. They're fucking proud of it! Is it time for the World Health Organisation to rename itself the World Nonce Organisation?
So he's just, for those that don't know, nonce is British slang for pedophile, so he's just straight up saying that the World Health Organization is the World Pedophile Organization. Okay. I guess we're gonna call this video, we're gonna name this video Paul Joseph Watson calls the WHO pedos because science doesn't agree with him.
And it remains accessible.
I don't know.
They're fucking proud of it. Is it time for the World Health Organization to rename itself the World Nonce Organization? Because I'm sorry, but anyone who talks about how children, babies, should be sexually...
I do hope he gets sued for this, by the way. This is a very recent video. Like, this just came out, by the way. Like, this is a very recent video. I genuinely do hope the like, World Health Organization goes after him for this, because he's just straight up saying that they are an organization of pedophiles, and they are a pretty powerful, like, medical organization. I hope Paul Joseph Watson gets fully litigated for this. They'd win. They would win. He just straight up called them a pedophile organization. Completely falsely, too. Full-on defamation. It's really funny how comfortable right-wing conservatives are getting with defaming large organizations, and I'm excited for the lawsuits to start. Like, obviously it happened to Tucker, but we're going to see it happen a lot more. Or Tucker and Alex Jones. But we're going to see it happen a lot more. We're going to see a lot more lawsuits get rolled out for defamation as these right-wingers get more masked off and more comfortable outright lying about more and more credible, powerful organizations that have the power to defend themselves. Usually they target small YouTubers with, like, no real platform or power to defend themselves. Now they're going after the World Health Organization and calling them pedophiles? Good fucking luck.
Sexualized from the age of 0 onwards. Needs to have more than just their hard drive checked. This after the UN published a report encouraging sex between...
The funniest thing as well is that Lauren Southern busted Paul Joseph Watson by leaking the DMs he was sending her, sexually harassing her, demanding that he have sex with her, or that she have sex with him. He had, like, it was, oh my god. Does anyone have a link to those DMs that she leaked of PJW having a meltdown at her because she wouldn't have sex with him? Yeah, those DMs were horrid. It is funny when these people try to claim that, like, the left are predators and the woke people are predators, when Paul Joseph Watson's literally been outed as a sexual harasser of other conservative media pundits that are women. And not only that, but there is a long-running trend of conservative women being sexually harassed by conservative male pundits, and Paul Joseph Watson is no doubt one of the go-to propagators of that shit.
Between adults and minors to be decriminalised. But I guess it's just about representation, right? Meanwhile, this past weekend saw the latest Eurovision Song Contest.
Is this supposed to make me mad? So, remember guys, this is supposed to make your blood boil. If you're a conservative and you see this, this is supposed to make your blood boil just by seeing it.
Okay, seems fine. Let's see Germany's entry.
Oh my god!
Because
whoa!
You can't represent Germany by...
I genuinely do, like, I do wonder, like, how can you live your life being this much of a snowflake? Like, listen, I'm a straight man, alright? I get it. Seeing, like, naked or nearly naked, like, men is not exactly my thing, right? It's not exactly enjoyable for me. I can understand that. There's no... I don't think it's homophobic to be like, naked dude, not my thing. That's not homophobic. But to literally be incapable of seeing or being in the presence of a guy in fucking, like, leather gear really does indicate to me that you have a very fragile sense of heterosexuality, okay? You have a very, very fragile sense of heterosexuality if this makes you uncomfortable. Like really. This shouldn't make you uncomfortable.
Because you can't represent Germany by flying the German flag. Gotta be the occupation flag instead. It's just about representing.
The occupation flag. Jesus Christ, these people think they're fighting a war. Also, Cherry, make sure you cut this image of PJW out for the thumbnail. I feel like this is a very good image to use. Very good pause face. Is that the end of the video?
Get early access to videos. Exclude.
Oh, and then he just chills for the rest of the video. Okay. So that was like 6 minutes of actual content. And then a minute, or actually, no, it was about 5 minutes of content, 2 minutes or 3 minutes of ad read, and then another 30 seconds of shilling at the end. Do you imagine, can you imagine how easy your life would be if you were a conservative media pundit? And this is what you got to do for a living? And not only did you do this for a living, not for like a measly, piddly, pittance, right? But you live in a mansion. You drive several cars. You never have to work again if this job stops being a thing tomorrow. And this is what you do for a living. And on top of that, you're evil. That is Paul Joseph Watson's life.